Welcome back to Conversations for Change, a podcast from the Nurturing Tomorrow Foundation. Today, we are joined by Alex Cheney, a consultant, singer, and mental health advocate who's been on a powerful journey of healing, self discovery, and breaking the stigma around anxiety, depression, and neurodiversity. As always, a quick reminder we are not mental health professionals. Everything shared today is from personal experience and perspective. If you are in need of support, we encourage you to please reach out to a licensed provider.
Alex, thank you so much for being here with us and just
For
opening
sure.
up. As we mentioned, we just think it is so important to have these conversations. So I'm so interested, though. At first, let's dive in because a a lifelong dream of mine is to be an a cappella singer and work at a paper company. So
Okay.
I'm super interested to know what kind of singer you are.
My undergrad degree is actually in music. I studied opera. My first I guess voice lessons were in classical music. The stories that I heard when I was growing up is that I was singing before I could talk. Yeah, my mom was a voice major in college. My parents met singing together at Duke University. Music has been in my life since I was born. But while I was trained in opera, I much prefer doing Broadway musical theater, stuff like that. I'm also a relatively new member of the Palm Springs Gay Men's Chorus, so I get to have my singing outlet with them as well.
I mean, wow, amazing. Back to where your parents met at the Duke Chapel.
Yep.
The acoustics in there are crazy, right? How
Yes. Yep.
what an amazing place to fall in love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I got to go back with
That's
them.
amazing.
They had a reunion, like a choir reunion at one point when I was a kid, and so I got to go back and hear everybody sing and be in there. It was a pretty awesome experience.
Wow. Wow, that
It's
is
awesome.
so that really is super awesome. I have a love for singing as well. Um, Although my family has encouraged me to sing solo when no one is watching, preferably when they're out of the house. My 3-year-old actually tells me to quiet down sometimes when we're
Oh,
in the car. So
well,
yeah,
I guess
Oh, poor
everyone's a critic
Aiden.
these days.
everyone's a critic. Everyone's a critic. So also a fun fact: we both have a shared love for Elton John on road trips as well. Can you tell me about some recent road trips you've been on?
Yeah, actually, I actually just finished one. A really good friend of mine, I lived in Vegas for 10 years, and so one of my best friends from that time in Vegas just got a really awesome promotion with her job, which ended up relocating her to Norfolk, Virginia. And since I grew up in that area of Virginia, when she told me that this was going to be a possibility, I said, if this happens, not if, when this happens, I'm helping you move. I'm coming with you. I'm just letting you know that. And we kind of had a laugh about that. So we took 5 days. We left from Vegas, drove across the country, did some little side trips. We went to Four Corners. I'd always wanted to go. I'm a huge geography nerd, so I'd always wanted to go to Four Corners and stand on all four states at once. We stopped. We visited some friends in St. Louis. Yeah, and so we both we had our own playlists, and so the playlist was dictated by whoever was driving. And so hers was more
As it
I don't know
should
how to.
be.
Yeah, exactly. But hers was more of the emo type of pop emo rock, and of course mine is going to the dance club, and so it was Whitney and Elton and all sorts of stuff.
I
Were you
have
singing at, the top of your lungs just, in the car? Because 'Cause I'm sure
Uh,
after the first couple days, you're just like, "Well, she's stuck with me at this point. If she doesn't
right.
like it, she doesn't like it."
Well, the good thing is that the way that we became friends was through a production of Sound of Music that we were both in Las Vegas. So we
Okay.
both sing. So that was actually a good thing. We broke out some harmonies occasionally too.
Alex, let's talk about your kind of mental health story. So,
Okay.
when did you first realize something was going on with your mental health, and what did that look like? Was it anxiety, depression, etc.?
So it was a mix of both, the anxiety and the depression. I finally started putting pieces together, I would say in the like late 2018, early 2019. I was going through some personal things, some relationship stuff, and I was getting to I was getting to a point where I knew that something needed to change with the relationship. I knew it needed to end, and I had gotten myself into a mental place thinking that if I were to end it, that I would lose my friends, I would lose my support system, I would lose all of this. And so maybe the easiest thing to do was to take me out of the equation. And so that's when I started thinking like, what the hell am I? What the hell? Like, why am I thinking this way? And I was actually sitting at work one day, and work tended to be the place that I could get my brain to shut those thoughts off. I could focus on work. I could focus on,
Hmm.
I'm a recruiter, so I could get on the phone and talk to candidates and kind of really engage with other people and things like that. And there was just this one day at work. It was toward the end of January in 2019, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake it. And my palms got all sweaty, and I was like, okay, I need to do something. And so I looked at my health insurance benefits. Who could I talk to? I think I need to see a psychiatrist, and so I called a psychiatrist. They saw me the next day, and I just kind of verbal diarrheaed everything that I had been, thinking about the last, several years, and that's when I first heard the words like, generalized anxiety disorder and depression. And, we were talking about my thoughts of suicide, and I had gotten myself thinking that was a normal thing that people thought about. I didn't realize that was not normal. And so like, as we were talking about this, and, she, put me on a medication, I was starting to realize that the things I had been thinking and the way that my brain was operating, I could take it back like to when I was like a kid, and certain things like how certain things
Hmm.
would trigger me, and how I was always a person I was always worried about what everybody else would think. Like if I did this and if I did what I wanted to do, I don't think people are going to like it, and I think people are going to hate me. So I'm just not going to do what I want to do and suffer so that I can make everybody happy. And so that kind of is what started my process. And then through that, I originally was keeping it very quiet. Was like, I felt, not, I don't want to say that I felt shame, but I just felt like this is very personal. Nobody needs to know about this. I can do this. I can take my pill quietly, and, things can even out. And then a couple months later, I saw something on Facebook or where somebody had talked about, they had just lost somebody to suicide or something like this. And I was like, you know what? My being quiet about my journey is not helping anybody. And so I started talking about it,
Yeah,
and people were just like, I can't believe that you've been going through this and you haven't said anything. Thank you so much for being so open. Thank you for taking us on this journey. And I think it was also because there are so many stigmas, but there are especially stigmas about mental health for men. And I think it was that when they saw
absolutely.
somebody that on the outside looked very successful, looked very happy, always seemed to be the life of the party. When they understood that I was having struggles, I think that also helped people realize, oh, there are some things in my life maybe I can benefit from talking with somebody. Maybe I can benefit, sharing my story. And so that's kind of how it started, and why I've been so vocal about my journey. I mean, and it's ever evolving. Like I'm learning new things about my own mental health, every single day. And I think it's platforms like this where I can come and talk about that, or anybody can come and talk about that's really going to help people, in the future.
I think that is so relatable coming from a standpoint where you know, you were looking around and thinking everyone around me has their life together, they're feeling good, they're happy, this is inside, this is wrong with me. But you also mentioned at the same time, you knew when your peer group, your circles were viewing you, they saw the life of the party, someone that looked happy. And when you put yourself in that perspective, you really think, well, what's wrong with me? I have all these wonderful things. Success, family, a support group. Why should I feel this way? And
Right.
then you don't consider that everyone else that you're looking at, and from the outside they look like they've got it together, on the inside they could be struggling just like you are, right?
Right. I think it was also like once I finally met with a psychiatrist and, you know, she put it in a really simple way to me. She's like, you also need to, set up time to see a therapist. She's like, I'm the chemist. I'm going to help your brain chemistry. And the therapist is going to help you work through the feelings you're having and how you can, you know, be able to understand when things are starting, how you can help them. And when I thought about it that way, I was like, it kind of helped take some of the shame away, and that like this is something going on in my brain that I just can't control. Like my chemistry is off. I've always joked that I'm a little off kilter, and so it was kind of like it was kind of like, oh, I actually am. And understanding that it's just something that I can't control, or that I it's just part of who I am, really helped me to understand that like I don't need to feel any shame about this. I should talk about this because I know there's other people struggling that probably think that they shouldn't talk about this, but it's something that they just can't even control.
It's you said something as you were talking about how you're still learning today, and the way I've been thinking about that as well is I'm not just learning about kind of today and the path forward, but I'm also relearning some of the stuff that's happened in the past.
Yeah,
And you also made the comment about like, oh, I've kind of always thought this way, or for a long time thought these things. And I've also looked back where it's like, wait, I did that thing when I was younger that, felt off and I had no explanation for it. But now I'm starting to learn that
right,
there's a reason for it. And, at least for me, one of the reasons why I like, talking about um how I am and who I am today is, not only to help the folks that are our age, but as we're interacting with people with children and stuff like that, how can we use, our story from the time we were born to today and in the future to help kind of improve their lives as well. We didn't have the
sure,
internet when I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. Well, not the internet of today, at least. And so, like, how can we use this thing that we have to help tell a story that those kids, those families may not
right,
see every day? So
for sure.
you were diagnosed with anxiety. Did it start with sorry, were you diagnosed anxiety and depression at the same time, or
Yes.
did one kind of okay? Um and your treatment really started with the psychologist you saw, you said, right away, and then
hmm
you started going to therapy. Um are you still going to therapy
You
today,
know,
or
I'm not. I'm not, and there's several reasons for that. So I was living in Las Vegas when all of this happened. All of this happened. That sounded bad. When I made these discoveries, and
okay.
so I ended up after I finally went through my divorce in the toward the end of 2019. I ended up relocating to Long Beach, California, like 2 weeks before the entire world shut down. So because I had left the state, my therapist couldn't see me
Yeah.
over state lines. So I did. I have looked for a couple, but as you know, I don't need to explain this to other mental health folks. Finding the right therapist is really difficult. I got really lucky in Vegas. That my first one was fantastic. So I haven't. I'm not currently seeing a therapist. I do think it's something that I want to start again. I'm in a little bit of a location transition period again.
Yeah.
We're up in the Bay for a little bit. I'm trying to sell a house up here, and then we'll be back in Palm Springs. And so I will. I mean, there's tons of resources in Palm Springs, especially for the LGBTQ community. So I'm sure I can find something there. But I'm also going to be. I think this is probably something that we were gonna talk about a little bit later in the conversation. So I might be opening the door a little too early, but in a
It's
couple weeks,
okay.
I actually am going through the evaluation process for autism spectrum disorder. Be-
Awesome.
because that is something also that, as I've been on my mental health journey, has kind of come up. And again, knowing that like my understanding how my brain chemistry is not necessarily the same as other people's, is that learning that, okay, why. And so some of the behaviors that I have, some of the ways that I interact with people, um, are these specifically anxiety? Is it just that I don't like people? Is it that I need alone time? Is it, all these different things? And so I'm that's going to be the next step of this journey. And I think that once that happens, that may open the door again to re-entering the world of therapy, because I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions. And what does this mean? And how do I, what does this mean for my relationship with my partner? And like how do I bridge these things? So that's where I am right now with my journey and therapy.
I'm super excited for you first and foremost because I know that you and I connected
Yes.
initially on LinkedIn because I posted about my uh autism diagnosis as an
Yes.
adult, and you reached out with some questions, so I knew that was a possibility for you at some point, and so I'm super happy. And look, to your point, finding the right therapist is hard, like
Yep.
really, really hard. And I know the people who know it know that. And I feel like there's a large group of people out there that just don't realize exactly how hard it is. And then once you add in another diagnosis like
Hmm.
autism, that changes the game completely because you then need to find a therapist that's, can touch on everything else, but autism plays such a big part in my life that I needed someone who could kind of talk, or I was going to say talk that talk, but like know exactly what I was
Oh, for
going
sure.
through.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
um I'm super happy that you'll finally be
Right.
be going through that process.
I would like to add to that, it is no small feat finding a therapist. I'm super fortunate that my therapist now I met about 6 months before shutdown, and we developed, a really this was before. I mean, there were online platforms at this time, but back in late 2019, early 2020, it's not to where it is today. So we really developed a relationship through that struggle. But I have had so many conversations with people over the years. I mean, so I started therapy when I was 12. So from 12 to 36, I don't know how many conversations I've had where people just tell me how much they don't like their therapist, and they just continue to see this person and talk to them, and I'm like, wow, why? Like you gotta really date around, get a feel for it. It's not, if you can't connect, then you're wasting a really valuable time where you could be healing. So I think it's really important. And I really thank you for sharing, of that, right now I'm not seeing someone because you are looking for the right one, because I think it is
Hmm.
important to find someone that you can connect with and feel open with
For sure.
being yourself.
And safe. Like
Safe.
I think
Yeah, that's the important part too.
really, really being able to share like almost be able to, because with anxiety and depression, like we're always, just to what you talked about before, Alex, like we're always nervous about like what are other people thinking about us. Are people going to be thinking, I'm weird or quiet or too loud or somehow all of those things at the same time? And you want that therapist that you feel safe, that you can just be yourself, talk to. And you also, like, at least for me, I want to feel like my therapist genuinely cares about me. And I know we're not going to be friends and whatever.
Right.
Like, they might not think about me after we hang up that call, but I want to feel that she actually, genuinely cares, genuinely wants me to get better, to the point where hopefully I don't have to talk to her, every 2 weeks and get
Right.
to a better point. um the last question I had in kind of this segment is around, you talked about medication earlier. You were put on medication after, I guess probably a little over 5 years ago at this point. Have medication is Medications, I had a doctor at one point that explained to me, like, therapy medication can help, but medication can't fix everything, and
Right.
medication combined with therapy, can, play a really transformative role. How has medication played a role for you? Has it been smooth, put on one medication, stayed on that one medication? Have you had to kind of rotate through? What's that kinda look like for you?
So again, like I just I feel like I've been a little bit lucky here. So I'm on citalopram, which is the generic for Celexa. I got put on that first, and then that's what I've been on the whole time. There have been a couple
Awesome.
times. There have been a couple times where even like my therapist was like, she was like, even though my experience with citalopram itself has been fantastic. It's whatever chemical imbalance or something that's going on, it's definitely smoothed that out. Where I mean, I'm not saying it's taken away the anxiety. I'm not saying it's taken away the depression, but it's definitely made it much more manageable.
Mhm.
My therapist wanted to see. As we were working through some of the baggage that I had in my past, and I was able to more freely uncover that, as we were working through it, she said, I feel like the goal here should be that, you were able to continue with therapy and we're able to work through these things, but, but see what that would look like with you not being on the medication. Because I feel like she even said, she's like, I feel like the medication is making you almost too good, where you're not necessarily able to dig in really deeply to some of your things, and that would made sense to me. So,
Yeah.
I worked with her and with her and my psychologist to titrate, and I went off the medication, and it seemed like I would have a couple of episodes here and there, but it was for it was pretty. I still felt pretty good for about 9 months. And then about 9 months after is like things, like it would be like the heart racing when I'm trying to go to bed, and, all of these different things. And so I had my general, my primary care physician was also a part of all of this. And, I was explaining it to her, and, she put me back on the medication. And, so I've attempted to go off the medication a couple times when I thought that triggers in my life were no longer there. But then I just have come to realize that there are so many other triggers that are, deep down, that I don't even realize are there. That and if me taking a pill every morning for the rest of my life means that I can sleep at night, and that I don't I don't think about taking my own life, things like that, then that's a small price to pay.
Absolutely.
Silent
Absolutely.
snap, the self-awareness there, chills, seriously.
Victoria, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, so Alex, I want to talk back to more. You mentioned the community that you have in Long Beach now. And just for the listeners and also for us, are there any types of community programs or outreach that you have participated in or been involved in that have really been instrumental in your mental health journey and helping others and
Yeah,
yourself?
for sure. So when I was in Long Beach, so I'm in the Palm Springs area now, but I was in Long Beach for
Oh,
about
okay.
about 3 years. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but that was like pretty soon after, like, I had gone on the mental health journey and all of that. So, I've been lucky that Long Beach had a very strong LGBTQ population, very supportive population. There's a fantastic LGBTQ center in Long Beach that would have a lot of events, or they would have things very specific to health concerns for our community. They have mental health professionals that were targeted to our community, that really understood some of the things we go through. And now that I'm in Palm Springs, those similar resources exist. I feel like there are even more of them. Also, being a part of the Palm Springs Gay Men's Chorus, like that's just opened up an entire new part of the community. Where I think that was something that was lacking in a lot of my life, is having that sense of community, of people that are facing the similar struggles, or they had a similar journey or a similar background. I firmly believe in this idea of like your chosen family, and how my direct family members haven't understood everything that I've gone through. They also haven't understood the part they've played in my mental health journey,
Mhm.
and whereas now having this really strong group of the people that I'm calling family, we're able to share these things and have conversations about, this happened in my life as well. This is how I handled it. This is how I dealt with that situation. And I feel like it really helps us open up about these things a lot more. And so, but yeah, I mean, there are definitely those resources there. But I've just found so much comfort in having built this really strong community in the Palm Springs area, that's really helped.
That's beautiful. And back to the chosen family, gosh, I can really relate to that myself. I know a few of my friends and I that we're very close and share our struggles. We kind of have we just do like a mental health check. We haven't, life gets busy. We haven't heard from each other in a few weeks. Everybody's got things going on. It doesn't have to be anything, but like just a quick, like, how
Yep.
you doing good. And I think that on top of being able to open up with someone, we just kind of live in a society where it's just, if someone asks you how you're doing, you're like, good, hope you are, or
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
fine, whatever.
I'm
And
fine.
if you
I'm
say,
fine. Right.
yeah, if you say something else, they're like, oh crap, I
Right.
wish I wouldn't have asked. So it's good. uh it's not good. It's great to have someone or multiple people have that sense of feeling that it's okay just to not be okay, and
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's not all butterflies and ice cream. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
melted ice cream and ants on your shoes.
Right.
Yeah, and like my family and some of my friends that I've been friends with my whole life, like I know they genuinely mean well when they want to help. When I'm having a meltdown, when I'm having a rough time, they genuinely want to. I know there's good intentions there, but in some ways, like if you haven't gone through these situations firsthand, you you can't almost help as well as that community, the kind of the new family you're building up. And I've been super fortunate in my adulthood to just make some of the best friends anyone could ask for. And what you said, Victoria, was like, I have a really good group of friends that I just don't talk to nearly as much. Life has gotten in the way. I'm busy with so many different things. But, my buddy Travis will just message me one time and be like, miss you, love you. I'm like, thanks. And he
Yep.
seems to always know exactly when I need that the most. I don't know if he's like spying on me or something, but like he always somehow knows there's like that telepathic um rhythm in the air or something, where it's just like, and I can go to him and be like, appreciate it. Like things have been rough and he'll send me a voice message back or call me or whatever, and like he's not just it's not that, oh crap, I wish I didn't ask. It's the genuine curiosity, interest in helping. So
Yeah, for
um
sure.
If you could go back I'm speaking with me, if you could go back to young Victoria, if you could go back to 15-year-old Victoria or 12-year-old Victoria, and knowing yourself, like, what is there, if there anything, is there anything that you would say to you? So Alex, my question to you is, if you could speak to your younger self, A, would you want to? And B, what would you say?
I mean, I think I definitely would want to. You know, you divulged your age, so I will divulge mine. My next birthday will start with a five. I'm not too sure how much I appreciate that. But when I think about me, my 12-year-old self, like that was the late '80s. And that was when you think about mental health, and you think about autism, like those were still things that were super taboo subjects, where the references were movies like Rain Man, and that's what people associated things with. And I think I would go back I would go back to that, to 12-year-old me and say, you know, if you just because you are different doesn't mean that you're that. Like it, you have to understand that like your differences are what make you you, and they're what make you special, and that yes, maybe there are going to be some times that you need some help, and it's okay to ask for help, because I think that's another part of it, is that there is such a thing where like you don't ask for help. The things that are going on in your brain, it's not because you're weird, it's not because you're different, it's because your chemistry is different. Like the way that you were put together is just different. And it's not bad, it's not good, it's just different. And there are ways to help you normalize it. There are ways to help you understand it. There are ways to help you work through it. And I think those are all of the things that were lacking in that period, where we just thought that was like, oh, you're weird. Like that was what it was. You're weird, And so you were cast out. People didn't want to be your friend
Mhm.
because you were weird. And I think that what I would say is like, you're not weird. You're just put together a little bit differently, and this is how you can work through it.
yeah, and being unique is a good thing. And that was something that I'm 39, and I think I just learned like this year, where it was like, talking to the psychologist during my autism assessment, and then now talking to a therapist, where it's like being unique is a really good thing, or
It's
can
a
be a really good.
powerful thing. It's a
It's a
Mhm.
powerful thing, and it's
powerful thing.
intimidating. That's why it's a
It's a
great thing.
powerful thing. It's a powerful thing that is made to feel very intimidating in a society that wants us all to assimilate.
Mhm.
Exactly, exactly, and I was like, I finally this year, I'm like, I told my therapist, first session, I said, "I wanna turn it into my superpower. How can you help me turn this into my superpower?" Um, and I don't have a
Well, I
cape or
think I,
anything.
I think you're on the right road.
I'm trying. I'm trying. That's all I can say, but it's a journey that takes time. It's not always an enjoyable journey,
Oh
but
yeah.
um, it's a necessary journey.
I think that's part of it also, is that there's the mentality of like the way that we're wired and the way that we're raised is that if things don't feel good, don't do them. And so much of
Yes.
therapy doesn't feel good. It's like you're having to deal with some really hard shit, pardon my language.
Yeah,
And it doesn't feel good. And like there were times I would leave therapy and I would just be like, I know that this is helping me, but right now all I want to do is like crawl into a hole and just not talk, not see anybody. I just want to be in my feelings. And so I think it's just this inherent discomfort with discomfort. And I think that if we can get more comfortable being in those really icky places, then it'll help a lot of people be able to understand that like it's okay to feel that way. If it's putting you on a path that's going to make you, you know, deal with some of your things, or put you in a spot that's going to be better.
Yeah.
That is so you put this beautiful mental image. I'm sorry I keep talking about butterflies, but as you were speaking and talking about being uncomfortable, I just thought about think about that caterpillar who's wrapped himself in that like awful, disgusting, it's probably like musty and just like moist in there and just really gross, right? And then just think about what emerges. I
Right.
mean, something that, mesmerizes, people it's such a beautiful thing. It
But
really
it's
is.
also, but it's also like if you think about, let's take this analogy further, like this visual further. Like you think about like a caterpillar, which is such like a cute little, a cute little thing. Then it wraps itself up in this thing, and it basically just liquefies itself, and it's just
Yes.
like into this like just, bleh, and then it reemerges into this butterfly. And so sometimes you have to put yourself into a bleh to be able to come out on the other
Yes.
side in a beautiful place.
Yes, the way you
I,
describe therapy, like how uncomfortable because I've heard people say that to a lot of my friends who are like, therapy doesn't work for me. It makes me feel worse than I did before I walked in. And in my mind, I'm trying to be supportive, and in my mind, I'm
Right.
thinking, well, isn't that the point? Like, that's
Right.
get it out, get it out.
Right.
That's that toxicity that's living inside of you.
Because all
yeah,
we've done, all we've done, all sorry,
you're
here
good.
we go. I told you tangents. Here we go. But like,
Here we go.
but I also, but I feel like, and especially like I look at the generation of people in my generation who are now parents, and how many of them just always say yes to their kids, or always, tell them exactly what they want to hear and do all this stuff. And it's like they have to understand that feeling icky is okay, or like not getting what you want is okay. Not everything is meant to, you're not supposed to always feel good, and so it's like I don't like the way I feel after therapy. Well, yeah, exactly, it's helping you work through your stuff. Like you have to feel that way before you can, so I think that's partially the, this generation of kids that are, kids growing up being told that everything they do is wonderful, and they're great, and which is good. Yes, we want to positively reinforce people, but we have to do it in a realistic way where, anyway. I'm not
I
a
agree,
parent.
and I
I'm
think
not
that
a parent, so it's easy for me to say probably, but that's just how I feel.
I am a parent of a human now of 3 years, a dog parent long before
Oh well,
then.
yeah. I mean, but the dogs are great.
But it's easier. It's easier for the parent to say yes. It's out of a convenience thing. Is what is how I feel about it. But no one the time. I was gonna say it was such a disservice when I was younger. I think of a lot of times I should have been told no, but I don't think it did me any favors as an adult looking back on it.
I do. I had a thought as you were talking, Alex, about like me going through therapy right now. I'm going through that therapy or that part of therapy where like it sucks, and I tell my therapist, I love my therapist, Hannah. She's amazing, but I have, last week I met with her and I said, this sucks. Like, I don't have any better way to say this. Like, I felt like I was doing better for a while because we were working on specific set of things. I was getting better. And then we started working on some other things, and she was making me think about things and talk about things that just are not the most enjoyable part of what I want to talk about. And, I get to the end of it and I'm like, that was horrible. I hated that. I'm looking forward to the next appointment because I I after it kind of settles in and I can think about it and work through it a little bit more, I'm like, okay, okay. I'm seeing the progress here slowly, but it like to your point, I think we need to be put in these like uncomfortable situations. And
Absolutely.
it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be enjoyable at all times. Um, but hopefully in time, it will it will help and allow us to kind of feel better in more of
Yeah.
those situations.
Do either of you guys listen to Hidden Brain, the podcast Hidden Brain?
No.
Shankar is is a psychologist. I think he works for NPR, and every week he brings in a different specialist, and they talk about different areas of mental health. And this last episode, it was about just how in our society and as human beings, we're on this pursuit of happiness, and especially Americans, because it's
Hmm.
embedded and written into our Constitution, right? And they talk about that actually, that people who are on this pursuit of happiness, and right now we're really into live your passion, find your passion, which I'm very much that. I live for that as well. But you also need to do those things that make you uncomfortable and that you don't necessarily bring you happiness. But just it's a really good episode. I felt like it kind of ties into what all of us were
Hmm.
talking
I'll,
about.
I'll check it out.
So I think that we should. So we kind of did talk about. You were talking about how we were talking about how important community is, but how as a community, just even us as a group of people who want to talk about our mental health, our own experiences, learn from the experiences of others, how do you think that we can all better support each other?
I mean, I think it's a lot. You know, I think we just need to communicate. Like we need to be comfortable. We need to find those people that we're comfortable with, and that if we're not doing well, we need to be able to say that. Or if something is bothering us, we need to be able to say that. Because if I take this back again to like the beginning of my journey, I was noticing that you know in my relationship, if something was bothering me, I would either push it to the rug, or I wouldn't say it because I would know, I would be like, okay, if I bring this up, it's gonna open up all of these other cans of worms that I don't want to deal with. So I'm just gonna keep it inside. And so I
Mhm.
think I think that if we can find those people around us that I can go to you and say, hey, I'm having a really terrible day. Or when you did this, when you said this to me, it made me feel like shit, and this is why. Like, I
Yes.
think that those are the kinds of conversations that we need to be able to have, whether they be with our friends, with our partners, with our children. I mean, maybe don't say something like that mean to your children, but I just think that those are the things that are really important. I'm very lucky personally that I have a lot of my very close personal friends that I grew up with, that I'm still in contact with, and we all grew up. We all went to from elementary school all through high school in southeastern
Yeah.
Virginia. In the 80s and 90s when people didn't talk about this, we are all still very close with each other and have all gone on our own kind of different parts of mental health journeys, and to different extents. One of my friends has actually just decided to go back to school. She just completed her master's degree in clinical psychology, and she's decided her in her previous life she was a pastor. And now she has decided to take that and to be a therapist that is helping people work through their religious trauma. And
That's
so
beautiful and much
yeah.
needed. Wow, that's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. And to be, I think it's like, I think, we're in a generation of people that are realizing that we acted one certain way, but we're still young enough to understand that, like, hey, maybe that wasn't right, or that wasn't the best. And how can I take those experiences and turn them into something good? And so I'm finding a lot of people like that in my life that are able to kind of look back and say and reflect and say, hey, this is how I was, this is what I thought, this is how I've taken that to reevaluate where I am, and to help bring that good to other people.
Yes, we still have some of that neuroplasticity left. Like I, I,
Yes.
I know that we do, and I want to add to what you said too. Like consider it a lifelong journey,
Right.
maintenance work, right? Like we don't just like work out a couple of times and then 5 years later think that we're fit from those few classes that we went to, and then we just like automatically go and do a 5K, so I think, to me, and maybe this comes a little bit from my background and love and passion for yoga and meditation, but I really try to put the mental and the physical health in the same the same level, and treat them as one.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Well,
so important. And
and
with
I
that
think
being said, treat it like that, right?
exactly, but I think there's, and there have been so many. I've seen so many memes, and like I've seen this said so many times, but I don't think you can ever say this enough. It's like, I eat a healthy diet, or I try to eat a healthy diet, so I'm taking care of like I'm taking care of my body in that way. I exercise, I lift weights, I have a Peloton, I like to go running. I'm taking care of my body in that way. Why are we not taking care of our brains? We're
Yes.
worried. We're worried about we're worried about our heart. We're worried about our livers. We're worried about our bones and our muscles. Why are we not worried about our brains? And that's and because it literally is what is helping the everything else function. And so I think that just needs to be said over and over and over and over again for people to understand that like you've got to take the time out to think about that.
And
And
I love how you put it, "Why are we not helping our brains?" I think if you put it that way to someone who's just not quite getting it through their
Right.
brain, maybe that could click.
Right.
it had me thinking about, like, we talk about these invisible diseases, like depression, anxiety, and when we talk about the physical items that people can see, if someone
Right.
breaks their leg, someone is more receptive to ask, "Oh, how are you doing? How are are you feeling better? Are you getting more strength in your leg?" But then when it comes to these invisible diseases, or disease sounds so dirty, but like people don't think to ask about it. People don't want to talk about it quite as much. And I think that's a thing, not just within ourselves, that we need to get better at being able to ask for help, to your point, and be able to talk about it. But like other folks need to be, I think we all have some room for improvement to ask others. And when things seem off, it's not just, oh, I see your broken leg. It's, oh, something seems different today or this week versus last week. Um, let's ask about it. And, it's depending on the day, we may not want to talk about it. We may not trust that person
Right.
enough to, want to share everything. But I think those baby steps, if a person, I have a very good friend of mine who I won't share their name, because I know they won't want it shared, but like she's very she has a lot going on and keeps it close to her chest and doesn't like to talk about it. And then, I asked about it plenty of times and didn't want to talk about it. And then finally, you know, I think she gained enough trust in me to where she could talk about it, and I'm one of those resources for her now. So, um, it's it's not easy, but it's just all the talk about kind of physical got me also thinking about a lot of the work that I think us as people can do with mental support as well.
Hmm.
Eh,
For sure.
Sean, I think a takeaway from what you just said to consider would be just because you ask once and you can tell your spidey senses say something's off and they say no, it's okay. Well, ask again. You don't have to ask just once. Like, if you feel something's off, give it some time, put a pin in it, come back to it. Just don't give up on the conversation.
I think there are also people that are afraid to ask about it because they're afraid of what the answer might be, and then their reaction will be like,
Yes.
"Okay, what do I do with this?"
Hmm.
Like if it's like, "Hey, how are you? Just want to check in. How are you doing today?" It's like, "Well, this sucks. My job sucks. Life sucks. Life is horrible." I mean, that's probably a little dramatic, but it's like, and then that person might be like, sorry." It's like I just think there are a lot of people that don't ask about it because they don't want to hear the truth. They won't know what to do with it.
Well, and to that point, like one of my closest friends, this was probably just a week or two ago. That exact situation happened. I asked them, something felt off, so I asked, and they dumped all of the information out, and this is just over like messaging. I didn't know how to respond. I typed maybe 5 different responses and I was like, none of this seems genuine. Like, I don't know what to do with this, and
Yeah.
I wrote, "I'm really sorry to hear that." And, like, a lot of times, like, it doesn't need to be this big kind of
Right.
solutioning session or ranting session or whatever. Like, a lot of times just somebody asking and then saying, like, "I'm really sorry," is actually more helpful than I think some people recognize. Maybe not
Or
always, but
not even saying you're sorry, just being like, "Yeah, that actually really sucks." And
or that.
don't compare it to anything, or
Right.
just be there, you know what I mean? Just take up space with that person and be like, "You know what? Yeah, that's really terrible." I think there are a lot of us out there, especially around our ages, that are in the same position. In the 80s and in the 90s when I grew up, the spectrum was there, but it is not the spectrum that it is today. So I think a lot of us who are ha- neurodivergent or have neurodivergent tendencies, people out there are really looking right now to think, am I, is this something that I could look into as an adult? So if there's someone out there right now who's like, how do I even start this process? Like, what would be your advice to them if it's something that they're thinking about?
Find Sean. uh, Honestly, because no, it's. I mean, I mean, I can just kind of walk you through what my journey has been. So,
Yeah.
like, as I was going through my mental health journey, I started wondering. I would say like it was fairly soon after that. So like probably I probably been questioning the spectrum topic for about 4 or 5 years. And when I was going through this, I was also I had another friend of mine who was kind of also talking about this with me, a little bit older than I am. So again, we both grew up in a time where that wasn't really discussed, or the what autism meant something much more extreme. And we also started talking about, she started talking about how she's very much an empath when you know, when she's around people, she absorbs their energy and blah, blah, blah. And so I also started researching more about being and what that meant. Um, One of the best books I've ever read in my life is the Empath Survival Guide. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest it. It like to the point to where I read I was like 3 paragraphs in on the first page, and I literally dropped the book and kind of like screamed because I was like, oh my god, I make sense. Like it was like the first time I actually made sense. And when I was reading the book, one of the chapters in there talks about how people who are very empathic often think that they may be on the autism spectrum, because of the way that because of how they feel, because of sensory overload, you know, things like that. You know, and when I was starting to learn more about this, I've always been one where yes, I can be the life of the party if it's around people that I'm comfortable with. If it's people that I don't necessarily know, I will stand in the corner and I will either listen or I will just go off on my own. There have been, you know, there was even a Christmas with my family where I had to remove myself from the room because there was so much. Like my stepmother is high energy all the time, and it is always the life of the party, and that doesn't ever, you know, it just amplifies the more people that are around. And so like I had to like remove myself, and so it turned into like, are you upset, are you mad, like what's going on, you know? And I was like, no, I need to recharge. I need to recharge. Like my social battery is depleted, and I need to recharge it before I can come back, you know, into the situation. And that when I started realizing that about myself, that I know went back to infancy, because my parents would always talk about how, you know, if I was, you know, playing by myself on the floor and I got picked up, I would squirm, I would like whine, I would like kick and like not want to be held. But once they put me
Yes.
back on my playpen or something, I was fine. And you know, which is not necessarily, I don't want to say normal, but it's different. And you know, and so when I was doing all of this, you know, it's really got me thinking a lot more. And when I was talking with my partner about it, like, and other people that are my age that are kind of talking about this now and realizing that, hey, perhaps I am on the spectrum, or perhaps this is part of me. It was actually Sean's LinkedIn message that really got me thinking about it. And he was talking about it so openly, and that how he had just been recently diagnosed as an adult. And I was like, but this is exactly where I am. And he actually gave me some resources to look at. And while, because I'm in California, those specific resources didn't necessarily work for me because California is weird. It allowed me to see, oh, there are resources out there, online resources, virtual, things like this that I can do. And that's how I ended up finding the company that I'm going to be talking with in a couple of weeks to go through the assessment. So I just think, there are so many people out there that are going through the same thing. And I think that taking this back to growing up in the 80s and 90s, where people did think of autism as being such an extreme thing, that it is a spectrum, and there are people that do have these exact same type of characteristics, that on the outside you wouldn't think there's anything, you wouldn't think there's anything different, you wouldn't think there's anything off, if you will. I hate saying it that way, but then my friend that I was talking about before, that just got her master's and is now going for therapy, her eldest daughter is on the spectrum, and is autistic, and is able, she's able to work. She's been going to school. She does require a bit more care, but she is still able to operate on her own. And so even with talking with her and about how I'm exploring this of myself and I'm going on this journey, she was able to say, this makes so much sense because I'm remembering you as a kid. I'm remembering growing up with you. And now that I have an autistic child and I'm learning more about it, I'm remembering things about you from your childhood. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm
Yeah,
remembering
me
things
too.
about, yeah,
I am as well, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
But she would be like, I remember things about you from childhood that definitely mean, or definitely indicate that you could be on the spectrum. And I think that I just think about like how many, like what how many how much more we know about it. Like, I think that that's also part of it. Is like people didn't really know a lot about it in the 80s and 90s, and so if you weren't, you know, severely on the spectrum, people didn't, they just thought, again, they thought you were weird, you were different, you were weird.
Yes.
And now it's being able to, kind of to what Sean said earlier. It's like I'm learning all of these things about myself now, and on this journey for these last 5 years. How do I make these my superpower? And that's what I'm really trying to do. And I think that the way that I can make it a superpower for me is to just talk about it more. And the thing is, like, I may go through this evaluation in 2 weeks and be told that I'm not on the spectrum, and that would be fine too. But at least will I will probably learn more about myself even through that
You
through that
will.
situation.
You
Right.
you
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
will,
even if you
absolutely.
necessarily aren't diagnosed on the spectrum, those traits that you've had since childhood,
Right.
those neurodivergent traits, like that's all still real. That's all still
Right.
there.
Exactly.
So maybe, there could be just like a few little hairs off, from
Right.
that, right? And so I wouldn't discredit this journey
Oh
any
no, absolutely
any
not. No,
less.
I think
Yeah.
it's been very eye opening, and while I and will freely discuss it, it's not something that I freely discuss with everyone. Like, it's people that I feel comfortable with. It's people that, again, like, kind of take it back to like my chosen family, or people that I know will understand. And to be honest with you, this is not something that I've talked about much with my father and my stepmother, because I just don't think that they understand it. Having come from that generation where my father was born in the late 40s, and so, when he was going through these things, it was in the 60s, and people, if you had autism, you were likely put in some kind of a special home or something like that,
Hmm.
and there's just so much that I feel like people don't understand, that it's like going to be part of my journey to be that person who can educate and say, like, it doesn't have to be. Autism is not a black and white thing. Much of life is not a black and white thing. There's all these shades of gray in here. And while you know, and Sean, like, his diagnosis with autism may manifest in a vastly different way than if I am diagnosed would manifest with mine. And I think that that's something that's really important to think about as well, is that just because, you are, if I'm diagnosed as autistic, just because I will be diagnosed that way doesn't mean I'm going to know everything about it, or doesn't mean like, oh, well, I'm, you know, I'm autistic and so are you, so we must be the same. There's so many different colors and so many different shades of it that we're still learning about every day.
I think it's important to tap back and to mention what you just said about how your dad and your stepmom, just because of the generational difference and your dad being born in the 40s, like they might not understand it. And I think that a lot of people out there in different capacities, and will, specifically to mental health right now, they are needing to, they don't know how to address this with their families, right? Like, how do you bring this up, because they're feeling the same way, they don't understand it. And I think from a place of, if you're learning boundaries, I think healthy boundaries are important. And if they can't understand it, that's okay. If you want these people in your life, great, but they need to respect it. I don't
Right.
think that you have to fully understand something to respect it. And I think that if somehow we as people can communicate that with people in our life, I don't need you to understand what I'm doing, just respect me. I think that that could be big in conversations moving forward with people
Yeah,
in our life.
for sure.
And respecting those boundaries, like, if I am neurodivergent and I'm talking about it, and with my peers or friends or family, and I'm explaining kind of what's necessary for me to be in a better headspace to kind of cope with the realities of life a little bit better, then, like, let's use work for example. If I have those conversations with work, if I need additional time, if I need more prep up front to be prepared for a big client presentation, like, yes, that's what's necessary for neurodivergent me. But there might be someone, let's say, newer in their career, who needs some of those similar items. So it's not just, hey, listen to neurodivergent Sean and do it for neurodivergent Sean. Like, by listening and taking these things into consideration, you are better. You are being a better peer. You are being a better colleague. Like, you're being a better person at the end of the
Right.
day. So,
I
and
think that's
yeah,
so what you just brought up. I think if I'm going to connect this also to the work that I do, so in being a recruiter, I think that as I'm going through my own journey, I'm starting to understand parts of a recruiting process, or like if somebody's applying for a job or going through an interview process, how biased these processes are towards neurotypical individuals. Where so many the way the interview questions are set up, or the way the interview panels are done, they are done in a way where they they positively bias people who can think quickly on their feet, who just, you ask them a question, it's like blah blah blah. Whereas, somebody who is neurodivergent needs to take a step back, needs to think about it, needs to formulate their answer, put something together, and then share it, which is oftentimes seen as like they don't know what they're talking about, or they don't have the
Yes.
experience. And I think that, again, if I want to take using this as my superpower, I think that this is some way that in my career I can help to potentially change the perception. In that we need to really look at how we're interviewing people, how we like,
I've applied for 117 jobs since March, and
yeah,
I've spoken to many recruiters, had lots of interviews, and interviewing is such a struggle for me. Like, I want to start crying right now listening to what you're
yep,
saying. I'm like, yes, like, please get on right now, become a top voice on LinkedIn, talk to the recruiters, let them know what's going on, talk to the hiring managers. They need to hear your voice, they need to hear your
yeah,
experience.
yeah. I mean, I shout it as much as I possibly can, but I just think that, the more so I guess to toot my own horn a little bit here, the next part of my journey, I just found out that I was accepted to Vanderbilt University to get my doctorate in organizational leadership and learning. So, nothing like going back to get your doctorate at 50. But I'm hoping that this will also help launch continue to launch this platform that I have, where I can, I want part of my research that I do with my doctorate to really focus in on this, on, what does it mean to be, neurodiverse in the workplace? What does it mean to be othered, if you will, in the workplace? Like, how can we, how can we create a workplace? How can we create organizations where people like us feel truly like we belong? That's, I think that is so much of it as well. Like, if you think about, even these 117 jobs you've applied for, these interviews you've had, like in those interview processes, have you felt a sense of belonging, like towards people that might be neurodiverse within the company? That's so important to think about, as people are learning about your organization. And so I'm hoping that I can take this next part of my journey, just mash it all together, and, then I'll put my cape on, and, I'll go save the world.
I feel so very confident. I don't know you, Alex, beyond, some of the messages we've shared back and forth and what you've shared on LinkedIn, but like based on this discussion, based on what you've shared on online, like you are such an advocate for, I feel like, for everybody. Like you are, like, I see your comments on posts, I see your posts yourself. Like I think you are such a big advocate for like the betterment of everybody.
Yeah.
So no pressure, but go get your doctorate, put on your cape, save the
And
world, because I think we need you. Like I think we, no pressure again, but I
I
think
mean,
we kind of need you.
I think the world needs me too. So, but yeah, so it's just gonna, I just gotta convince everybody else.
that's that's a beautiful way to wrap up the conversation, I believe, where it came from. We started where you were sharing with us, that this you went from thinking this is a world that I might not want to be in to this is a
Right,
world that needs me. I mean,
right.
how that's so beautiful.
I
Thanks.
do we need like a mic drop sound in here so we can just be like, I feel like, no, don't. You dropped your
Okay.
microphone last time, Victoria, and I think that's why you were having issues with it at the beginning here.
That is true.
Um,
Alex, I think, again, to tap back to what you've said, we can go from being in a world to where we feel like we don't belong to flipping that perspective to being like, wow, the world actually needs more of me.
Hmm.
Um, and with that being said, I would like to know, how can our listeners connect with you?
Sure.
If anyone is looking to reach out, because I know from the conversation that we've had today, I'm dying to stay connected with you, see where your journey goes, and I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Cheney, Cheney. You can find me. You'll know it's me when you see next to my name. You'll see a rainbow flag and a unicorn. So if you don't see a rainbow flag and a unicorn, it's not me. But you can
Perfect.
also find me through my business, my consulting business called a little bit Alex. So that's a littlebitalex.com. You can email me at alex@a littlebitalex.com. Lots of Alex's in there. But yeah, but I mean, I'm happy to stay connected. Absolutely love to stay connected with the two of you, but I'm also always happy to, chat with people that, might be feeling in the same situation, or feeling some of the same things. And, I think there's so much opportunity to not only share my experience, but to also learn from others. And I would love to have that opportunity.
Truly, and I don't want to speak for Sean when I say this, but we are really so thankful to have had this conversation with you. It has been a learning experience for us all. This is a lot harder than it looks, if anyone's wondering. And
it is.
you
I
have
still
most
have the
wonderful.
microphone that my cat has chewed. Uh, we talked about that last time. It's still there, but this is much
Nice.
harder to do than than you think.
So, with that being said, guys, we are going to head out for the day. And remember to subscribe, visit nurturingtomorrow.org, and let's keep the conversations going.